what you can't explain. It's coming back again. I can see it now, I can see it now. What you can't explain, coming back again.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another coffee and crime time. And today we're actually traveling to Surrey, a county in southeast England where in November of 1995, 16-year-old Ruth Wilson vanished under very odd and mysterious circumstances. Ruth was a smart and reportedly happy girl from a good family who one day decided to take a taxi to Box Hill, a remote area known for its rugged terrain and dense woodland, and she was never seen again. As the years went on, pieces of clues and evidence emerged that painted a picture of family secrets and lies, and many believe that the hidden truth of what Ruth's life was really like contributed in some way to her disappearance. We're going to get into all of that today, but first let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Scentbird. I've worn perfume for a long time, and I still remember the first bottle of perfume I got when I was 15 years old. It was a Christmas gift from my older brother's then girlfriend, and she was real fancy. She lived in New York City, she was a personal shopper, she had style, and she always smelled good. And honestly, I thought she was the classiest woman I had ever met. She gave me a bottle of Clinique Happy, and I wore that scent forever. I never ventured away from it because it smelled good on me. I liked the citrus notes, and I was honestly afraid to spend money on something else, only to find out that I didn't like it as much. But that is why Scentbird is so great, because it's affordable and it minimizes the risk of purchasing a full bottle of perfume. Your first month with Scentbird is only $8, and after that it's only $17 a month, and you're going to receive enough fragrance for 30 days. Plus, Scentbird has a very large and diverse selection which gives you the flexibility of being able to try a fragrance before you commit to a full bottle. They have fragrances from popular brands such as Versace and Prada, but they also have less well-known and more niche brands like Parfums de Marly and Roja. And these are brands I never would have known about and would probably never try on my own, but through Scentbird, I have discovered them and I've fallen in love with many of them. I still like to stick to more fruity notes, and this month I tried Intention by the Fluid Project, and it has notes of sweet mandarin, sugared moss, and warm amber. I think it smells so good, like candy, but it's fresh and it's clean and it lasts all day, which is very important to me when choosing a fragrance. But by far, the clear winner this month for me was Moments of Passion by Nicole Miller. This delicious scent has fresh citrus and passion fruit notes in it, and I thought I was going to like it the least out of all the choices I picked because it also has vanilla in it, which I usually hate in a scent, but it ended up being my favorite. And I think it's definitely the passion fruit I'm drawn to because I've never smelled a perfume that has such a true to life passion fruit scent to it, but this smells like I just shoved my face into a freshly cut passion fruit, and I absolutely love it. I did purchase a full-size bottle of this because I loved how it smelled on me so much, and I got tons of compliments the very first day I wore it. But if you have no idea what kind of scent you like and you don't know where to start, that's not a problem at all because Scentbird has a quick quiz you can take that leads you in the right direction and offers personalized suggestions based on your preferences. I also love Scentbird's packaging because it makes these scents so easy to travel with. You can never travel with a full-size bottle of perfume because you can't pack it in your carry-on, and I think we've all had the experience of a bottle of perfume breaking in our checked bags and leaking all over everything we've packed. With these vials and the convenient little holders, that is not an issue. Slip them into your purse, your carry-on, your gym bag, the glove compartment of your car, wherever, and you'll never be left without your signature scent to spritz on when the moment strikes. I also do want to give a quick shout out to Scentbird's Strawberry Shortcake collab because I am from the Strawberry Shortcake generation and I had the dolls that smelled like strawberry. I remember exactly how they smelled. It is a snapshot of my childhood, and Scentbird describes this scent as being where luxury meets nostalgia, and that's that's spot on. What's cool is the strawberry shortcake scent uses something called emoto waves technology, which apparently activates the neural pathways in your brain that elicit emotions associated with happy memories and nostalgia. I think it's so cool. It smells so good, and I just had to mention it. So if you're interested in trying Scentbird, all you have to do is scan the QR code on your screen or use the link below in the description box. And with my coupon code HARLOWE55 off, you'll get 55% off at Scentbird. Plus, you'll get free delivery to your door and a free case. You get the product for half the price, which is just $8, and that's an absolute steal. Once again, scan the QR code that you see on your screen right now or click the link in the description box to take advantage of this great deal right now. Scentbird also makes for great stocking stuffers, so get started finding your signature fragrance immediately. Click the link in the description box, scan the QR code. Thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. Ruth Wilson was born on January 31st, 1979, and she lived with her parents Ian and Karen and her 13-year-old sister Jenny in a 17th century cottage on Wanham Lane in Betchworth, Surrey, 21 miles southwest of London. Now, from the outside looking in, the Wilsons had a very happy and normal family life, and Ruth was a thriving and intelligent teenager with a wide variety of interests and a promising future ahead of her. Music was very important to Ruth. She worked a Saturday job at a local music store, she played the electric guitar and piano, and was known to always have her Walkman on her person. Both of her parents were teachers, and so the value of education had also been impressed upon Ruth her entire life. And in school, she was very motivated. She took her studies really seriously. Ruth had just started sixth form, which were the final 2 years of her secondary education. And Arthur Webster, the head teacher at Ashcombe School, said, quote, "Ruth did extraordinarily well in her GCSEs, achieving more than 57 points for her grades. She certainly had one of the highest performances of pupils at Ashcombe last year," end quote. Ruth and her family also attended St. Michael's Church in Bethworth, where she was a member of the choir, she played the organ, and took part in bell ringing. Much like her life, the weekend before Ruth's disappearance was spent in a pretty normal, low-key way. On Saturday, Ruth had worked a shift at the music store in Dorking, which is close to Betchworth, and after that, she had lunch with her ex-boyfriend, who was her ex but turned into her best friend. His name was William Kennedy, and they had lunch along with another friend, Neil Phillipson. Later, both boys would report that Ruth paid for the meal, which was Indian food, and then she made an offhand comment about how it would be something they could remember her by. They didn't really know what she was talking about at that point. They just thought she was being tongue-in-cheek, or maybe she hadn't meant it that way. The boys didn't pay too much attention to this comment. After this, Ruth went to St. Michael's Church for handbell practice and then to a youth club in Dorking before going to her friend William's house for dinner. Now, this is her friend William, who used to be her ex-boyfriend. Now, when she arrived home that evening, Ruth had a bag full of clothes that William's mother had given her, and for the rest of the night, she and her sister Jenny had a good time as they tried on the clothes and they laughed and they even raided their own mother's closet, giggling with each other about the style of the old-fashioned clothes. The Wilson family remembered that Ruth had been in a good mood that weekend. She was relaxed. She was having a good time. There was nothing out of the ordinary about her behavior that entire weekend, at least according to her family. On Monday, November 27th, 1995, the Wilson family all woke up and began getting ready to travel off to their respective destinations. Both Ian and Karen, Ruth's parents, were in a rush that morning, with Ian running late for his job as the head of science at Red Hill Secondary School, and Karen needing to get to her position as the deputy head of a local primary school. Ian Wilson remembered seeing his daughter Ruth that morning. He said she had her headphones on, listening to her Walkman, like she usually was, and Ian pushed past her in his haste to get out the door. Later, he said, quote, "I remember being annoyed with her. I said something like, 'Out of my way, I'm in a hurry. I'll always regret that those were the last words I ever said to her,' end quote." And I think this is very poignant for a lot of parents or just people in general. And I know that sometimes, especially when you're running off to work and school in the morning, things can get very chaotic. I know I get overstimulated when a lot of things are happening at once. And there is sometimes a reaction of being like annoyed or sort of hurried with your children as you're trying to get them out the door so that you can get out the door. But I always keep in mind now, and I tell my kids too, even if we're upset with each other or if I snapped at them or they snapped at me, before they leave the house, I always say, come back here, give me a hug. You never know what's going to happen today. I love you so much. And I make sure that, I hug them and tell them I love them. And that's the last thing that they hear from me before they leave the house, because you literally just don't know. And maybe it's because of the true crime videos that I do, because I've seen and heard and talked about so many of these stories where parents of missing children say, oh, the last thing I said to them was, rude, or the last thing that we did was fight. And that sticks with me very, very harshly. It does stick with me. So, of course, Ian says that he regrets that these were his last words to his daughter Ruth, because that was the last time he would ever see her. Once Ian and Karen had left the home, Ruth and her sister Jenny were left to catch the bus together, as they usually did. But at the last minute, Ruth informed Jenny that she wasn't going to be getting on the bus with her that morning. Jenny said, quote, I wasn't entirely surprised because she was in the 6th form and she didn't always come in for the whole day. I thought it was a bit strange that she left it to the last minute to tell me, but that was all, end quote. After Jenny left for school, Ruth's friend William showed up in his car. Remember, William is her friend, but he used to be her boyfriend. And William offered to drive Ruth to school, but Ruth turned down his offer of a ride, telling him she would see him later on. William believed that this meant Ruth would arrive to school later that afternoon after lunch because she'd never been the type of person to skip or miss school without a reason. But Ruth never made it to school that day, and she didn't come home after school either. At first, Ian and Karen felt that Ruth must have had a babysitting job she'd forgotten to tell them about. But as the hours passed and she didn't come home or get in contact with them, and it started to get darker outside, they began to worry and they called the police. Now, the investigation that followed would piece together Ruth's movements that day, but the details would only add to the mystery. It appears that after Ruth's friend William showed up and asked if she wanted to ride and then left, Ruth called a taxi. She had the taxi driver drop her off at the library in Dorking, where she remained for several hours. One of the oddest things that Ruth did at some point during that Monday was order a bouquet of flowers for her mother, Karen. But she gave the florist strict instructions that the flowers should not be delivered until 2 days later, on Wednesday. At 4 p.m., Ruth called another taxi and had this taxi bring her to Box Hill. Located in Surrey, Box Hill is a prominent natural landmark known for its stunning scenery, rich biodiversity, and historical significance. It's part of the North Downs, which is a ridge of chalk hill, and lies within the Surrey Hill area of outstanding natural beauty. The hill gets its name from the box trees that grow in abundance on its slopes. Box Hill rises to around 735 feet above sea level, offering breathtaking views of the surrounding countryside, including the River Mole Valley and the South Downs. The hill is known for its steep, chalky slopes and areas of woodland, grassland, and scrub. It is a very popular spot for hikers, cyclists, nature lovers, people who just want to, be around some natural beauty. And there's well-maintained trails such as the Box Hill Circular Walk and the Stepping Stones Walk. Now, without a doubt, this is an area of great natural beauty. But on the day that Ruth Wilson was dropped off there, it was 4:45 p.m., overcast, rainy, and already getting dark. Ruth had requested to be let out of the taxi a short distance from the Hand in Hand pub, and the taxi driver remembered a few things about his passenger. Her 5'2" frame was clad in a red, long pullover sweater, black velvet pants, and black ankle boots, and she'd been carrying a small blue duffel bag where she kept her Walkman and tapes. As the driver pulled away, he said he saw Ruth in his rearview mirror, and he felt that it was a little odd because she just stood there. She didn't make any move to walk on to her next destination. After this, no one really knows what happened to Ruth Wilson, but the following day, an investigation began which led law enforcement to the Box Hill area, and there they started to search for her. Not only did law enforcement find out that Ruth would often go to Box Hill after school before going home, but the Friday after her disappearance, they found some alarming items at the top edge of Betchworth Quarry on Box Hill. Under a bush, 3 letters addressed to Ruth's family and friends, and nearby were several empty packets of paracetamol, along with a half-empty bottle of vermouth. Now, I had to look this up, but paracetamol is a painkiller. It's basically just Tylenol, nothing strong, nothing crazy. Obviously, the nearby area was searched, but Ruth was not found, and police could not determine if the notes had been left there on the day she'd vanished, or if they'd been left there on some other occasion, because she did go there a lot after school, or if the notes and the vermouth and the paracetamol, if that whole thing was a distraction so no one would come looking for her. The following day, a massive search was launched by Surrey Police, Surrey Fire and Rescue Services, and 60 volunteers from the community. They used tracker dogs, a helicopter with thermal imaging, and a trained search team to comb the Betchworth Quarry and the 100 acres in the immediate area where Ruth Wilson had been dropped off by the taxi the previous Monday. But of course, there was no sign of Ruth again, not her body, not her clothing, no personal belongings. It seemed she had vanished without a trace. Now, 2 days after Ruth disappeared, on Wednesday, November 29th, a large bouquet of flowers was delivered to Karen Wilson. Now, according to Karen's husband and Ruth's father, Ian Wilson, the flowers were an expensive arrangement, and there was no note attached. They didn't really know why Ruth had chosen to have the flowers delivered to Karen on this specific date. Now, speaking of Karen, in the wake of Ruth being gone, she told the media, quote, "Her disappearance came like a bolt out of the blue. We had a happy weekend. There was no anger," end quote. Now, before we move on in the timeline, I want to introduce you to 2 men who brought a lot of attention back to Ruth Wilson's disappearance. In the mid-90s, retired police officer Liam McCauley moved from North Ireland to Dorking, and he was made aware of Ruth's case. He got in contact with a journalist from The Guardian, Martin Bright, who had written a few articles about Ruth's disappearance, and they began working together on a documentary which would explore what had potentially happened to the 16-year-old girl who, it seemed, had a happy enough life where she would not want to go missing.
That was the last place that she was seen. I don't think she planned to disappear at all. And I think something terrible has happened to her. And she's more than likely still up there. Somebody knows where she is.
The case of Ruth Wilson really affected me. It was so unusual, such a peculiar and mysterious case of a 16-year-old who went missing in the Surrey Hills in 1995. There were multiple appeals for Ruth to come home, and it was her family's belief that she was out there somewhere. The official version suggests this is a missing persons case. This is unresolved. There is no evidence of any crime, and that is absolutely correct. I still, all these years later, am haunted by the belief that that wasn't the whole story.
So you hear that the official narrative was that Ruth ran away. She voluntarily disappeared, and they believe this based on the fact that there doesn't seem to be foul play. However, Ruth was 16 years old. She brought her bank card with her, but she never used it after Monday, November 27th, 1995. She didn't have a passport and she didn't drive, so how would she have gotten far? And without the ability to change her identity, which would be difficult for anybody, much less such a young person who doesn't have any experience in this, to accomplish, how could Ruth be living off the grid, not letting anybody know where she was, not spending any of her money, etc.? We also heard in that clip that Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are ready to move on. But Liam believes that the people of Dorking have a right to know what happened to Ruth. Now, Ian and Karen did make some media appearances in the early days of Ruth being missing. On December 8th, they appeared on This Morning, which is a television program in the UK, and they said that they believed Ruth was alive, but that she was afraid to come home. Now, this is something that's always been interesting to me, and put a pin in it because I'm going to come back to it. But first, I want to tell you something that Liam McCauley and Martin Bright discovered when they started peeling back the layers of Ruth's case. Liam submitted a FOIA request, but he was told that the case was still ongoing, and so his request for documents was denied. He also wrote to Ian and Karen Wilson, who still lived in the same cottage in Betchworth, but they didn't respond. It had been presented to the world that Karen Wilson was Ruth's biological mother. But in fact, as it turns out, she was not. Karen was the stepmother to Ruth and Ruth's sister Jenny. The girl's biological mother was a woman named Nesta Landig, and this was a name given to Nesta by her adoptive parents in Wellingborough. Nesta married Ian Wilson in Newport, Wales in 1976. They then had 2 daughters together, right, Ruth and Jenny. And then on December 4th, 1982, Nesta passed away when Ruth was just 4 years old and Jenny was an infant. It appears the girls were told their mother had died from falling down the stairs, a tragic accident. But according to her death certificate, Nesta took her own life that December. According to friends, Ruth had figured this out, and she wasn't happy about it. She wasn't happy that this had been hidden from her. Now, Martin Bright was curious as to why this fact had been hidden, that Ruth's biological mother was gone, and that the woman that had been purported as Ruth's biological mother, Karen, was actually her stepmother. He was like, why would they not be upfront about this, especially when he had interviewed the family for his 2002 article? And he said, quote, "Why hadn't they told me this? Was this really such a happy family? And did the death of her mother have anything to do with Ruth running away?" End quote. Now, eventually, Ian Wilson did get back to Martin and Liam, and he said that the family had no interest in taking part in the documentary about Ruth, but they trusted the 2 men to handle the situation professionally, whatever that means. So, with no family to turn to for information, Martin and Liam started seeking out friends of Ruth Wilson, starting with her ex-boyfriend turned best friend, William. Now, William said that Ruth was a troubled teen who wasn't always happy at home, and he was aware that her biological mother had passed away, and he had also heard the story that Nesta had fallen down the stairs and broken her neck. But the most information came from a newer friend that Ruth had known only a short time, a classmate at Ashcombe School named Catherine Mayer. Catherine said that Ruth had found out the truth about her mother's death just shortly before she vanished. And she said, quote, "Ruth was really troubled. She had so much going on in her head that she was desperately trying to find out who she was. She was unhappy, really unhappy. She cried with me about things. She didn't want to be there. Just why is not clear. She was secretive about that. She didn't go into details," end quote. Catherine's mother also remembered Ruth sleeping over around this time and confirmed that Ruth did not want to go home. At some point, Catherine moved away to Sheffield, and in the weeks leading up to her move, Ruth asked Catherine if she could go with her. Within a few weeks of Catherine leaving Betchworth, Ruth also vanished. Now, according to Catherine, Ruth often talked about running away, but never mentioned taking her own life or anything like that. And in October of 1995, Ruth had traveled to London to view her mother's death certificate herself, believing there was more to Nesta's death than she was being told.
Why do you think she was so desperate?
I think her whole childhood was based on a foundation of secrecy and lies.
She knew that her real mother was dead.
Mm-hmm. She told me how her mum had died.
Right.
She knew her mum had fallen down the stairs.
Yeah.
But something obviously didn't add up for her.
Yes.
So she pursued it and looked for the truth.
Right.
And found it.
Yeah.
When I read about her disappearance and that she'd been to the florist and ordered these flowers, I just know that is Ruth.
Almost like a dark practical joke that she was playing on her step.
It was, stick 2 fingers up kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
You know, this is what I'm planning and I'm doing it. And there's a stubbornness about her.
Ben Anderton, another friend from school, also reported that Ruth had run away from home the month before she disappeared, and she had hidden at his house in Betchworth when she ran away. Ben said, quote, "I believe she's safe and well somewhere. She'd run away from home for a week or so about a month previously and hinted at going away again a week or so before her disappearance, although she didn't give any details." End quote. So, Guardian reporter Martin Bright, he contacted the Wilson family to let them know that there had been some developments. And then Ian Wilson, Ruth's father, issued a statement saying, quote, Her family are extremely hurt by this statement and do not recognize this view of Ruth's childhood. Ruth always knew about her biological mother's death, but not the exact cause. Sadly, we now know that before her disappearance, Ruth had discovered the tragic circumstances of her mother's death, but equally sad, she chose not to discuss or question this with any family members, end quote. Now, I've always thought it was strange because the family received those 3 letters found on Box Hill after Ruth vanished, and the letters are sort of posed to the general public as being goodbye letters, and combined with the vermouth and the paracetamol, the pills, I guess it's kind of set up to look like maybe Ruth took her own life. But based on the reactions and comments of her father Ian and her stepmother Karen, it does not appear that they believe anything bad happened to Ruth. They believe that she is still alive out there somewhere, which means they believe she ran away, even after reading the letters, which suggests to me there was no mention of Ruth taking her own life in those letters. Now, Ian and Karen have remained very private about Ruth's disappearance. They haven't done a lot of media interviews, and after the initial first few months, it didn't appear that they were appealing for information from the police or the public. And why would that be unless they were pretty confident and certain that Ruth wasn't in danger or in the clutches of some nefarious figure? I mean, your 16-year-old daughter just completely vanishes. This whole thing is set up on Box Hill with the letters and the vermouth, and she's not using her ATM card, and there's no sign of her anywhere. Like I said, she's 16 years old. She's never been out on her own before. She's run away before, which is something that Ian and Karen did not choose to share with the investigators or with the public when Ruth vanished, which is something that you'd think would be important, right? Because now you're thinking, okay, well, Ruth, she's completely gone. What's going on? She's never done anything like this before, but she has done something like this before. It's also going to suggest that maybe the family dynamics were not as happy and wholesome as they've been sort of purported to be. Now, on October 6th, 1996, it was written in the paper that after Ruth's disappearance had been featured on Live TV's Missing Persons program, a potential sighting of her had happened on the outskirts of London on October 1st. Additionally, on the first anniversary of Ruth's disappearance, a girl who resembled her was captured on CCTV footage at a Dorking newspaper shop about 2 miles from Box Hill. Allegedly, the female teenager was distressed when she requested a copy of each of the local newspapers, and she became more upset when she was told that one had sold out. And apparently, there were stories about Ruth's disappearance in both of these papers. The shop owner saved the surveillance footage and then called the police, and evidently, Ruth's parents, Ian and Karen, were able to view the CCTV footage, and they say they believe that it is Ruth on the video. In 2005, Sergeant Shane Craven, who was the head of the East Surrey Police Missing Persons team, he announced that there had been many reliable sightings of Ruth in Dorking in the weeks following her disappearance, and these sightings had been made by people who knew her well. And in 2006, Ian Wilson wrote an open letter to his daughter Ruth. And he said, quote, "We still have the presents we bought you for Christmas in 1995. They're safe in a drawer, waiting for you to come back, though I expect your tastes have changed so much you'd probably laugh at the music and clothes. Though the house is too large now, your sister Jenny has moved out. We can't bear to move. It's your home after all. Your disappearance is still a mystery. You were confident, independent-minded, and apart from the usual teenage frictions, seemed so happy at home. You can imagine our terror and how we searched month after month. I trawled London, hoping against hope I'd find you. We wondered if you had a secret, but your filofax revealed nothing. The police discovered you had visited Box Hill before, but I don't know why. There have been many false leads. Every time our spirits are raised, only to be dashed again. It's torture. Even now, I find myself driving past bus stops and staring. Could that young woman, you're 27 now, be you?" End quote. Now, for those of you who don't know, the younger generations, specifically, a filofax is like a daily planner or a planning system. If you use it correctly and take it seriously enough and you don't have crippling ADHD and only write in it for half of a day, it's supposed to be very good for organization. Also, while preparing the script and seeing the word filofax, I had to go online and see if they still existed, and then I ordered one because I still have hope that I can be organized, so I'll let you know how long I last this time. Survey says probably not great. Probably not great odds that I'm going to be keeping up with it and stay organized. Okay, so here's where my head's at with this case. There's a lot of things that could be going on, but I have a hard time believing that 16-year-old Ruth decided to disappear, go missing, and over 30 years later has still never popped up or made herself known. Like, never, which is absolutely insane. I fear that this girl is not okay. Now, there's a couple theories. Did she take her own life? I don't believe so. Obviously, I think there would have been evidence of that if she had done that on Box Hill, which is where the letters and the vermouth and things were found. I think that she either set it up to make it look like that, or she was just, drinking and writing letters and being emotional. We do not know what those letters said. I think that would be important. Is there some indication of what she did or where she went? Did she accuse her parents, Ian and Karen, of keeping the truth about her mother Nesta's death from her? Was she angry about it? Did she express to them that she was angry about it? Why have those letters been kept private? Who were they all to? Was there one to Ian? Was there one to Karen? Was there one to Jenny? Who were the letters addressed to? Why did Ruth send her stepmother Karen this big elaborate bouquet of flowers? Was there a card? What did the card say? It kind of seems like a fuck you gesture almost, to go missing and make sure that the flowers are delivered 2 days after you go missing to sort of tell Karen, I don't know, what is she trying to tell her? I'm not sure. But it doesn't seem like a nice thing. It's a nice bouquet of flowers, but Ruth is clearly not happy about the truth of what happened to her mother being kept from her. She had to go to London, view the death certificate, figure that all out on her own. What triggered Ruth to start looking into her mother Nesta's death? What triggered Ruth into believing that maybe her father and her stepmother weren't being 100% honest with her? I'm not sure, but as far as I know, it looks like Ian Wilson married Karen Wilson just a few years after Nesta died, which would have made Ruth about 6 years old. And so Karen would have been the mother figure in her life from a pretty young age. So I don't know, was there resentment there? Was Ruth saying goodbye to Karen? I'm not sure. Now, we know that Ruth went to Box Hill quite a lot after school before she went home. The police found that out. My question is, was she going there because she was meeting somebody? Had she met somebody or talked to somebody or communicated with somebody who she would go to Box Hill and see? And then that person was like, hey, you're upset with your parents. We're getting along great. Let's go away together. And then that person caused harm to Ruth, because I don't believe that this girl is alive out there just hiding still. What would be the point in that? What would be the point in that if you're mad at your parents and there's nothing graver or more serious going on behind the scenes, like abuse, neglect, things like that? Why would you stay hidden long after you became an adult? I was also wondering about Nesta's family, Ruth's biological mother, Nesta. She had an adopted family, and then she also would have a biological family. So did Ruth track down the adopted family or the biological family and then go to see them? And maybe they've kept her hidden all these years? Or did Ruth plan to escape and make her own life and, start fresh? And then she encountered foul play while she was sort of wandering the streets of London. Are these sightings of her reliable? And if they are reliable, how is she surviving without any money? As a 16-year-old girl, without ID, she wouldn't have had the ability to get a job, things like that. So it's crazy. There's a lot here that just doesn't make sense. But once again, when the police say, oh, this girl went missing voluntarily, she did this on her own, that's fine. That may have initially been where it started. She may have initially said, I'm going to run away and do things on my own, but then she could have encountered foul play and something bad could have happened to her. And the fact that it just doesn't seem like anybody's looking into that anymore, and they've just sort of written it off, even Ruth's own parents, who have said multiple times they just want to move on. And even in Ian's open letter to Ruth, which I think is also funny, you're going to send out an open letter to your daughter, but you're not going to tell us what she wrote in her letters to you. But anyways, he wrote in his open letter, he looks for her still. Sometimes he'll see a girl at the bus stop and be like, is that Ruth? So clearly he seems to think she's still alive. He doesn't seem to be too worried that she could have fallen into the wrong hands or fallen into the wrong situation. It doesn't seem to be sort of eating away at him because, like I said, there's not this push from the parents or the family to locate her. And that's usually what you would see. You wouldn't see, a retired police officer and a journalist putting more effort into finding out what happened to this girl than her own family and parents. That dynamic is very odd. So pretty much that's all we have for this case. And I just thought it was a very odd and mysterious disappearance, and I wanted to know what you guys thought about it. So make sure you let me know in the comments what you're thinking about this. What do you think about Ruth Wilson? Where could she have gone? Did anything I say trigger something in your head that would lead to a theory of where she could possibly be? Please let me know in the comments section. Also, like this video if you liked it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We are gearing up to do a deep dive on this channel. The next few videos are going to be about the Boys on the Tracks, which is an Arkansas mystery. This is a highly requested case that a lot of people have been asking me to do for years, and I finally took the time to dive into it, and I have to say, I understand why it was highly requested. So we're going to do that coming up soon. Thank you all so much for being here. Stay kind, stay beautiful, and stay safe. I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.
Well, the levee don't break now, and the bottle's going straight down.